On today's special episode of Survival Dispatch News, we're continuing our discussion on the terrorist attack in Israel and what we can learn as far as protecting ourselves from potential attacks here in America with renowned self-defense expert Tony Blauer. We're not going to rehash all of the expert opinions we've got this week from military and law enforcement people. We're just going to jump right into this. As far as your recommendations on how people could level up their self-defense game if and when they find themselves in unfortunate circumstances with a terrorist attack here on the homeland.
I mean, we've had many conversations before. You know that I always drive the conversation back to resilience and specifically fear management, understanding and differentiating between the biology and physiology of fear and the psychology of fear. I'm tired of people talking about fight, flight, freeze. I mean, that's a post-mortem assessment. Oh, look, they fought, they ran, they froze. Okay. We need to, in all situations, and not just, this is like, I talk about all fights are dangerous, but the most dangerous fight is an ambush. And what I've been doing literally rants and sermons on this for 30 plus years now. And what we find out when there's sudden violence is nobody looks cool. Nobody's doing like technical moves. And I always like to remind people, don't confuse technical with tactical. The focus too often in self-defense is just too much specificity as opposed to gross motor movements. Get moving, move fast, move hard. And it's not always towards the threat, although I sometimes tell people, sometimes the safest thing to do is fight to the death. I'm always very leery. We talked about this offline, and I got asked, like the day that this happened, I got hit up on Twitter by a very, very famous newscaster who said, I'd like to know, and I train him personally, and he said, I'd like to know what Tony Blauer thinks, and he tagged me. And my first comment was, I'm not going to comment. I don't want to in any way, shape, or form appear like we're exploiting someone else's murder to promote a program or a system. And at the same time, it's like, well, you've invited me on. I'm a subject matter expert. Am I not going to answer? What am I going to say? We don't have to go over this, but some of the stuff that's going on over there is outrageous. It's next level psychological warfare, including the physical violence with what they're doing with cell phones and texting people from their kids' phones, and it's just insane. Having said that, to your point, years ago, it used to be, oh my God, that's awful, but that's happening in Israel or the Middle East or in Paris, or we would go like that, well, that's overseas. Well, we know without getting into the politics of it, the last 3 years, what is it, 7 million people have come over our borders, right?
It's many millions.
Yeah, it's millions. And even before that, there were bad guys here, right? Mm-hmm. And so now there's 10x bad guys. All of this is relevant, but it's irrelevant because all fights are dangerous, but the most dangerous fight is the ambush. You and I could be sitting in the backyard. I come visit you. I know you train your ass off. I know you are allegedly you have access to weapons.
I lost them all in the boating.
In the boat, I heard about that. The boat. So we're
very unfortunate,
right? But let's say we're on your boat, right? and we're on your boat, and we're going, okay, cool. And an RPG hits the boat. I'm not hitting the Karate Kid stance. You're not drawing a weapon.
You're fucked.
Shit, right? But it's startle flinch.
Yeah.
If you're alive, there's the natural instinctive flinch. And what happens in that moment there is, and we've talked about this before, this is the whole science behind the startle flinch, weaponizing your startle flinch and the whole spear system, is your executive function is hijacked for a moment during sudden violence. And so it doesn't even matter if you're trained and have access to weapons. If you're truly surprised, the neurobiology of the startle response is the hands come up to the head. I was doing this with, I would imagine that a lot of your listeners are armed. People, I don't know if you don't know the demographics of that, but they either have weapons at home or they have weapons on them. Most of them aren't, and this is an important distinction. Armed at home, when you've got somebody like jiggling your back door and you grab your shotgun or you grab your pistol and you yell, "I'm armed, I've already called the police," whatever, to try and as a deterrence, and they're still trying to kick in the door and you decide, I'm going to shoot through the door, am I going to wait for but you've got like a field of fire. It's very different if you're in an active shooter or an event like the festival, where you got people running and screaming and you can't orient on directly like who's the bad guy right away, although it's very obvious now. So training in a sudden violent dynamic situation is very different than sparring at your dojo, at your martial arts school. And I go, "Chris, get me in a headlock again." "Oh no, the other side. This is my bad side. I want to work." Like, we don't realize,
right.
But we don't realize that so much of self-defense training is so choreographed and so cooperative. The biggest, and it's not that it doesn't work. A lot of people, want to say that they go, "Oh, Blauer's insulting jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga, Taiba." No, I'm not. I'm just saying that it's cooperative. There's what we call ACP, awareness, consent, preparation. I'm going to spar you now. I'm going to put my mouth guard on. I'm going to bow. We're going to touch gloves. That doesn't happen with spontaneous violence. So even trained experts can get sucker punched, lose their weapon. The average hit rate for a trained police officer in a gunfight is dismal. Right,
something like less than 1 in 4 shots.
It's under 20%, and that's, let's say, like 5 to 7 yards. And here's somebody who carries a gun all the time, is looking for bad guys all the time, knows that's a bad guy, and then something erupts, and they're still going, "Oh." And the reason people miss, ironically, this is a fantastic conversation. And I've talked about this before to the firearms community. The reason you can miss from 3 to 5 feet out is because of the startle flinch override. And I've done this with guys we're off on a tangent. We'll come back to your question. I want your audience to understand this.
Sure.
Not going to mention the agency because I still consult with them, and they're very important in this day and age. But their qualifications were like next level because of the area of operation that they practiced in. And so these guys their groupings were insane when they were doing demos on the range with me and down on the range. And they brought me in for extreme close quarters scenario training. And I said to their firearms instructor, I said, "That's an amazing grouping. It looks like a slug." It was a pistol, but it looked like a slug hole. Because, 9 rounds, boom, 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 and like this. I said, "That's beautiful." I said, "I'm going to stand behind you on this next one. And while you're shooting, I'm going to lightly punch you in the ribs from behind. I'm going to maybe do a light shin kick on your leg." And he looks at me, he goes, "Well, no, we're not going to do that because I'm firing live rounds. Everyone's behind me. If you kick me, like, that's unsafe. Don't hit me with let's use simunitions or UTM or assert." I said, "No, we're going to do it live fire." I said, "I'm not stupid. I'm not going to hit you so hard that while you're shooting, you go, and turn around and shoot me in the head."
Okay.
It'll just be a light tap. I'll just hit you, give you a little bump, And I want you to do the same focused grouping. And what I'm saying here to the guy, I said to the group, and there were about 9 instructors there, and if everyone's visualizing this, I hope you are. I said, when you're practicing on the flat range, you've got a stationary, static target. In this day and age, Are you fighting one person, or are you fighting 9 guys jumping off paragliders or more? Are you fighting one person, and are there people running to get out of the space, bumping into you? Can you control your weapon and your focus and your field of fire while people are screaming and running by you and shoving you out of the way? Is somebody grabbing at you thinking maybe you're a gunman because you don't have a police uniform on? In this case, I don't know if you heard that this is what I heard. I mean, I didn't verify it, but I don't have any reason to think it's false. When this attack happened at the outdoor festival, a lot of people got in their cars and they're driving out of there, and a policeman stopped them, and they all stopped. But the policeman turned out to be one of the fuckers in a fake police uniform. And then when everyone was congregated, they opened fire on them.
Yeah.
And there's something like, I mean, I'd have run the guy over had I been there, because that's incongruous with the totality of the circumstances. Because a cop, a legit cop, a real cop, would have been waving people through. Let's go, get the hell out of here. He wouldn't have been stopping people if there was gunfire behind.
Good point.
But in the panic, and this is where we always come back to fear, in the panic, because we're so used to outsourcing our safety, we see the badge and the uniform and the gun as safety, not realizing we need to be resilient. And the only way you can be resilient, and the only way you can have that intensity and that intention to protect yourself and your loved ones or be the courageous bystander, is if you understand self-awareness and fear. And that's our whole no fear program. But let me get back to that, because I want to finish this other thought. So I'm at this range with this organization whose name I almost slipped out, but I'm not going to. And I'll tell you offline. And so I stand behind the guy, and he goes, I don't want you to hit me while I'm live fire. And I said, well, dude, I'm not going to hit you so hard that you're going to lose your balance and flinch backwards and shoot one of your teammates. I'm going to tap you. And everyone's kind of nervous. I said, this is cool. And I pointed out, I go, look how nervous you are to add a little bit of contact in a drill. How are you going to, if you can't even imagine doing this here at your level, are you so sure that how you're training is going to work in a real violent encounter? And for those of you listening, like this is me, a professional, talking to like tier 1 level operators. So I don't want any of you listening to this going, oh, I'm going to go to the range and push my friend while he's shooting. That's not what I'm talking about. So don't fucking do that. So I stand behind this guy, and he's like nervous like this. And I said, you just empty your mag like you did before. He looks over his shoulder and he goes, and he grabs the gun. Now, the first volley of shots when he did his first demo was like beautiful, double taps and 3 shots and bang, bang, bang. Like this one went like this, Chris. Paused, nervous, over his shoulder, looks at me, brings out the gun, bang, 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 bang. And I'm standing there behind him with my arms crossed like this, like 3 feet behind him. Yeah. I didn't do a fucking thing. All of his buddies are looking with a smirk on their face, and his grouping is this big.
Yeah.
The anticipation of impact produced psychological fear that impacted the quality of his fine motor skill.
Amazing.
Right? And it was an amazing moment for people. And what I'm getting here is this, for everyone listening, is we still and this is, I've been studying violence, fear, and aggression for 4 decades. And the most important thing that I've discovered, and it keeps getting reinforced in every class, is our ability to manage our psychological fear directly impacts the quality of our movement. So assuming we've trained properly, quality of your movement is going to be directly impacted by how you manage fear. And so people ask me, what should they have done here? What should we do here? I go, the joke I was making, you and I are on your boat. and RPG hits it at the front, and we're like, holy shit. Next thing, like 2 boats swing around. Instead of paragliders, it's boats, and guys open fire. We had a hope that they ran out of ammo, they forgot ammo, they have jams, or they just missed us, for us to survive that. And let's say now we can jump to our guns, okay, whether they're on us or on the boat. Of course, they're all underwater, so we dive down and swim to them.
Of course.
But what I'm trying to explain to people is, in a real crisis, what happens at a behavioral level is our situational awareness is always compromised in an ambush. This is something I've been telling people for years. People go, what's the counter for an ambush? Well, there's no counter for an ambush. There's only a counter to a failed ambush. Meaning, and obviously you can be a contrarian and go, well, no, blah, 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 blah. Right. Meaning the intent of the ambush was to capture or kill me.
Right.
If I can fight, it's because that ambush failed at a certain level.
Right.
The guy went in, grabbed his gun and went, die, click, oh shit, and did this. And while he's, he forgot, he was watching too many TV shows and he forgot to load his, chamber the round. While he does that, I'm on him and I'm fighting. There's got to be a failed element, and either through a pre-contact cue, a telegraph, a missed shot. So the principle of immediate action during an ambush, and nobody talks about this, presupposes you survive the ambush. So if we go linear logic, the point of the ambush was to incapacitate you.
Right. So
the only way you can counter the ambush is if it was failed. So I and it's just to be provocative. You know me, I'm a deep thinker, and I want to shake people and go, you can train all you want. Like a lot of people go, like, I said this yesterday on a podcast. What should people do? Homeland attacks. The first thing, the first conversation shouldn't be, what type of long gun should I have at the house? If you can't answer the question, can you manage your fear? Should there suddenly be a home invasion, whether it's a terrorist or, 3 guys kicking down your front door is still an act of terrorism, even if they're not terrorists by definition, right? It's a terrifying moment.
Improve your emergency preparedness by learning skills and strategies from experienced preppers. Build lasting connections with like-minded individuals to share your passion for safety and readiness. Access a wealth of knowledge and resources to assist you in protecting you and your community in certain situations. Go to survivaldispatch.com to get started.
Here's something that just happened yesterday, kind of terrifying for a dad. My daughter, my 26-year-old daughter, goes to visit her girlfriend, and they're at a posh mall, like, Louis Vuitton stores, and they're sitting there at a coffee shop, and they're sitting there talking, and a weird guy walks up to them 3 feet away, looks at them, stares at them, like awkward moment, they're staring, and he goes, I'm sorry. And they look at each other, and then he steps away, he turns around, and he drops 2 knives on the bench in front of the coffee shop, and then just starts staring at them. And they both get up, and they move to the door, and there's 2 security guys there. One's on his phone already, and my daughter says, are you taking care of this? And the guy says, yeah. So there already somebody reported him and called him. So my heart's racing now telling you about it, because this happened yesterday. And I looked at my daughter. I said, okay, I'm glad you got up and moved, but what would you have done if he had turned the knife on you instead of dropping it? And she goes, Dad, because people don't want to talk about it.
Right.
She goes, well, that's why we moved. I go, well, you moved because he didn't attack you. And that was smart what you did. And I'm glad you immediately located a security guard, and they were already on it. But now I want you to think back at that location, and I want you to go, holy shit, this was the best outcome of a potentially very dangerous situation, where suddenly there was a moment of clarity or conscience in this nutcase who stood there, said sorry, and then dropped his weapons. The fuck, right?
Yeah.
But think about this. And I hope your audience is tracking this, because you don't know what you're going to do until you're doing it.
Right.
Now, there are a lot of people listening to this who are very trained. You're very trained. You've got military, law enforcement people around you, people listening to that. So a lot of them would argue going, well, Blauer, I agree with some of your stuff, but I disagree with that. I train from tier 1 all the way down to, care and services people. Like I'm talking about like social workers, and I gotta have a system that works for everyone, from the door kicker to the person who's like complete pacifist anti-violence. And I need a system that works. And and I've seen this with tier 1, with military, with SWATs, people hesitating in situations.
Yep.
They could have a gun out going, don't do it. And they're hesitating. The only reason you hesitate is because of fear. And it could be, is this a shoot or a no shoot? Is my backdrop like safe? Who's behind the person? Backdrop, right? But it all comes down to psychological fear impacting. And if you don't manage your fear, then the pendulum swings either way. You overreact and you hesitate for too long, or you overreact and now you've maybe selected a level of force that wasn't appropriate. Obviously, in the case of a terrorist attack or some sort of like abduction, type thing, this is just me. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on Zoom. Is a joke, everybody, is there's no level of force that's too severe for a terrorist, right?
Right.
We have a maxim: if you mean to do it, make it mean. Like, you shouldn't be sparring, when you're in a death match. But I want people to understand that we can't be cavalier about our confidence, and we need to train. I'm sure every one of your experts talked about training. Buying a gun doesn't make you safer. It just gives you an option that you wouldn't have had if you didn't have a gun. But if you don't, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in many cases, it makes you less safe. Here's a number for you that varies very little year to year. 70% of Floridians who are killed by gunshots, not including suicides,
Their own gun.
shot with their own gun.
Yeah.
Because they pulled it, they were in fear, they hesitated, the bad guy took the gun away from them and shot them with it.
Yeah. That's an insane statistic. I'd never heard about that. And even more reason why, like our human weapon system program and the no fear program and the other stuff. I always tell people this. I did this on a gun show a week or two ago, and I want you to do it. I think I did this with you when we talked in Florida, where if I attack you suddenly, you're going to startle flinch. So if you flinch like this, right? I don't see a gun in your hand.
Right.
So the neurological wiring of a startle response is to protect your head. You can see that if someone's on the ground getting the shit kicked out of them, they should be grabbing the bad guy's foot.
Right.
But they're covering their head.
Turtle.
Right. And that hands are covered. So the startle response, I come to hit you, I'd swing a gun at you. People, we've got tons of pictures, and we show it in our instructor class, like people with bullet holes in their hands and their forearms. And they're not trying to do Wonder Woman, with deflecting bullets. What they're doing, is we just dated ourselves. That's how old Chris and I are. Like,
sure,
no one else knows Wonder Woman. What's he talking about? But it's just this idea of this hands coming up to protect your head. And we make this morbid joke. The good news about the startle response is it's faster than a speeding bullet. The bad news is it doesn't stop the bullet.
Fair enough.
So at the end of the day, like if you said, what should our audience do? I would tell them, you need to learn to differentiate between the biology of fear and the psychology of fear. So the neurobiology and the physiological responses that each of us get are pretty common, but some of us might have like a much higher elevated heart rate depending on how we've trained. Some of you listening to this, you sweat really easily, other people don't. So depending on your body type and your psyche, but you will get butterflies in your stomach, right? There's certain adrenaline responses that happen when there's danger close. What the body does, at an unconscious level, sudden non-conscious level. But what happens is our brain starts to produce a movie in our mind. And the acronym I always use, it's a good one to memorize and try to understand. For fear, false expectations appearing real. FEAR, false expectations appearing real. It's when we're visualizing an event in the future that's debilitating us in the present. Okay. So the thought of something's happening and you go, oh my God, I don't have my gun, I'm screwed. Because let's say you're in a venue that you just knew they had scanners and you were going to a sporting event or a music event or a certain restaurant, and you weren't sneaking in your weapon. You knew you locked it in the car and you went in there, something kicks off. The problem is, and this is again stuff that we go over in our training, is this Socratic pause, meaning Socratic is like you, the student, need to figure out the question and the answer. And that is if you take your gun off and put it in your car and you're going somewhere, if you haven't thought about what if something kicks off and I don't have my weapon, then what your brain automatically does is, shit, I don't have my gun.
Right.
And now you're in the fear loop and you can't deploy a strategy while you're in the fear loop. While you're you got to clear your fear like a malfunction in a gun. That's a metaphor I like to use, is your mind has malfunctions. I'll give you a great example. And let me ask you this. How's the background noise? Because I got some construction going on outside. We're good?
Can't hear.
I can close the door here. I love sharing this example. So folks, if you're listening to this, you probably have a smartphone. Have you ever, well, not have you ever, you, of course, have left your phone somewhere and forgot about it. And think about what you did. You were walking away from a meeting or a lunch or dinner or a bathroom, and you'd put your phone down to wash your hands or whatever, and you left it there. We've all done that once. Mm-hmm. While you're walking, something in your reticular activating system, that part of your brain system that's responsible for your awareness, suddenly you go, my phone. And you stop walking, and I'm going to move here. You stop walking and you go, my phone. And you pat your hands, and then you kind of look around frantically, and your mind, you're retracing where you just were.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Have you done that?
100%.
Okay. So in our system, in our SPEAR system, in our self-defense system, we talk about when a stimulus is introduced too quickly, that triggers a fear spike, you lose executive function, that highest level of our personal power, and that bypasses our cognitive brain and we get reactive. So I'm giving you an example here where you forgot your phone. Who gives a shit? But you stopped what you're doing. Your situational awareness ceased to exist there, right? I could have walked up to you, headbutted you, punched you, but you're doing this. My phone, where's my phone? You're in your mind, retracing your steps over your phone.
Right.
And then people go, what if a guy pulled a gun on you? Well, I would do this Jackie Chan, John Wick move I learned in the dojo. And maybe you will, but if you haven't thought about the fear and managing the fear and the override, we know this is neuroscience. This isn't my, I'm proud that my company did the research and we brought in the 80s, the startle response to the self-defense, combatives, defensive tactics world. We got organizations just discovering it now, 30 years after me, going, hey, did you see this report from Force Science Institute on the startle response? I go, dude, we've been doing that since 1987.
Funny.
But my point being here is it's fear triggers the startle response. When you're startled, you're not startling towards your gun, you're startling towards your head.
Okay.
You're not startling towards an improvised weapon. You're startling to protect your head. And immediately, if the violence takes any more than a nano moment to make contact, the brain starts going, fuck, fuck, fuck. And you go into denial. Think back to the phone. You don't keep walking going, It's okay. I'll get to this payphone that doesn't exist up here and I'll call the restaurant and see. You immediately all of your rational thought was hijacked. Executive function was hijacked.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, there's my phone. I thought someone might have stole it. I was still on the bar. We do that. And I'm used as an example that everyone can relate to, because when people online exploiting violence say, well, that's why you got to learn Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, Taekwondo, MMA. I go, that's fine. Those are all tools. It's the same as I just bought a Glock because there was an attack in Israel. I just bought a shotgun just because there was an attack. You still need to manage the fear. Right. Because if you manage the fear, you help manage the timeline of violence. The violence is going to take time, and violence loves speed. And what I've been telling people for years is you need to improve your mind speed, not how fast you punch or how fast you shoot. I might be a really fast shot, but because I was going, and I use this example too. I'm giving you examples where there's no danger to your life. You ever get a flat tire?
Yep.
Right? As soon as you get a flat tire, guaranteed, everyone listening to this, when you realize you had a flat tire, you start to slow down and pull over, and none of you ever said, it's pretty exciting. I rarely get a chance to change my flat tire. This is a good chance to do another rep. Let me time myself and see how fast I can change the flat tire.
Yeah.
Right? You weren't thinking mind speed, because the mind navigates the body. How fast can I get to my equipment, get out of the car, jack the car up, get out of it. Oh, boom. Because if you're a terrorist chasing you and you've never changed your flat tire, it's going to be fucking slow.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just giving a goofy example, but here's my point of the human condition. And this is what's missing in all self-defense, is understanding neurobiology and the neuroscience of fear, the psychology of fear, because everyone talks about the physiology of fear. And it's irrelevant in the moment. The body's going to do what the body does. If you piss your pants or don't piss your pants, you're not controlling that. You're not going, I should piss my pants now just to fucking clear my bladder. Right? But you can control your mind by recognizing you're in the fear loop and doing stuff to you'll in a violent encounter, you're not shifting back to parasympathetic. You're not supposed to be, but you can control hyperventilating and make sure you're breathing, and you can turn fear into fuel. That's been my life's work. How do you turn fear into fuel? Because if you can change your relationship with fear, you can empower yourself. It can trigger this fucking indignation, anger. Indignation is a special type of anger. It's that, how dare you? Like what we all felt after 9/11. How dare you? One last thing about the flat tire. What we do is we go, I don't fucking believe this.
Yeah.
That's denial. Then we sit there and we probably smack the steering wheel. Right? Misdirected anger. Shit. And then we get out of the car, we slam the door. Misdirected anger.
Yeah.
And then we stand there like Buzz Lightyear with our hands on our fucking hips. and we look at the tire and we go, fuck. I don't know if you have to bleep out the swearing or if it's okay to swear in your show.
Go ahead.
It's time to swear, guys. And for those of you watching it seriously is time to fucking swear. I do not like what's going on. I hate what happened to my daughter yesterday. And the acronym on the wall behind me, it says fuck fear. I'll move over here, but my camera will track me. It says fuck fear. And it's not me being a crass American. Fuck is an acronym for face it, understand it, control it, know it. When you get to know fear, you can leverage it and turn into fuel that's going to drive you, the human weapon. My body is the car in the metaphor. My mind is my nav system, my decision-making, and my fuel is fear right now. The primary ingredient of courage is fear. If courage didn't require fear, nobody would look to a courageous person and go, oh my God, how did you do that? Right? The fact that you're not sure how somebody could fight like that means you have fear. And if you talk to a really courageous person, they will tell you they had fear too, but they knew they had to do something.
Right.
And that's the focus. But
well, if you think of stress in general, stress will either crush you if you let it, or it'll provide the impetus to motivate you on to, trying harder, succeeding, sort of thing. It's your choice.
Yeah. And you look at, I mean, you're extremely well trained and very knowledgeable about strength training. And you know that you can't build muscle and get strength without stressing the muscles. But somebody who doesn't understand that paradigm shift, might do some curls and it hurts, and they put the weights down and they go, oh, this isn't for me, not realizing. And I'm not talking about the training, proper technique, and understanding the load. I'm just saying, like, there are people who avoid working out because it's stressful, not realizing that if you scale it properly, the adaptation is what you want. The same thing goes for fear. Courage is like a muscle. You can build it every day by making small choices to do courageous things every day. You don't have to wait for like a fire or an active shooter to get your one rep. There's lots of things that scare us every day where and that's the whole no fear program is based on that. But let's say you went, okay, this is a wake-up call. We got open borders. We got people in here. What do I do if? And now you go, okay, I'm going to get a gun here. I'm going to get a gun here. I'm going to get a dog here. I'm going to get an alarm here. I'm going to get cameras over here. You haven't done anything for you, the human weapon. How do you keep your wits about you? And what I'm talking about is, how do you improve your mind speed? And then how do you move in the most efficient way possible? So our system, and you know this, we looked at what sudden violence does to us from a neurobiological level. That's all the startle response, and then the emotional psychological reactions to that. And so understanding the psychology of fear, how to weaponize the startle flinch, and then how to move. So even if like in our gunfighting class, it all starts with, oh shit, like there's a startle response. Am I hitting the bad guy? Am I We just did it on Monday. You know this, I teach 4 times a week on Zoom. On Monday, because of what had happened, I said, okay, guys, guess what we're talking about this week? Now, what could you do? I started off our show today, Chris, saying, hey, if we were sitting on your boat, barbecuing a hot dog on the back, and an RPG hits at us, and then, two speedboats whip by and open fire, and if you said, oh, immediate action, jump in the water. Okay. Before you jumped on the water, what do you think you're doing? When the RPG hit the front of the boat, without thinking, our bodies all went like this, fuck, and turned away. And before anyone else could say, grab that spear gun, jump in the water, grab the weapons, grab the go bag, whatever it is, you have to clear the fear. So the most important thing, and I talk about, is, yeah, you can get the dog and the gun and the camera and all this stuff, but are you a human weapon? I call this the naked warrior principle. Like, can you fight naked? And I like to come up with things that make people go, well, I don't want to show up at that seminar. Right. Have you seen me out of the shower lately? Like, as we get older, our physiques have changed, right? So the naked warrior, folks, is a metaphor. It's not literal, but what it means is, can I fight naked? And then it's like, oh, give me body armor, give me a gun, give me a wall, give me a dog, give me an improvised weapon. And all of our technologies seem to work better when you're a naked warrior first. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
But
so
I'm familiar with your stuff, and
yeah,
many of our viewers are not.
Yeah. So, at the end of the, like everyone listening here, you are a human weapon, whether you believe it or not. Your body and mind do amazing things. Your body wants to survive. Your mind wants to survive. And that's our approach to self-defense, is how do I reawaken the warrior system? Because as my friend Jack Donovan said to me many years ago, when I was on his podcast, he said, he was paraphrasing something I was trying to articulate it, and he said it so eloquently, I quote him now all the time. It's, people have outsourced their safety so long they've forgotten they can fight. Right.
Good point.
And it's okay to outsource your safety if you trust who you're outsourcing it to. Right. That's a whole other topic.
It is.
Right.
When you have a 12-minute national average for the response time for the cops to get there, maybe it's smart to outsource that.
Right. And so violence loves speed. It's 12 minutes to the good guys arrive, the cavalry. And I say this, you've heard me say this before, you're the first responder in your fight. The first responder that you called is not the first responder. He's the second responder.
Right.
So, you need to be the first responder. And here's an interesting thing. If I told people, you need to learn how to put on a tourniquet yourself, apply a tourniquet to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, people go, yeah, I can buy that. That's not that expensive. I can learn how to do that. And they'll do that. Maybe they keep it in their car, they keep it in their backpack, keep it in a fanny pack. But if I said to someone, you should really learn how to protect yourself, they're like, I'll call the police. It's so weird because
911.
Right. Yeah. In a sudden violent encounter, you don't need to have time to dial all three of those numbers.
Right.
It's like 911. Oh, fuck, it's happening.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot to say. And I could say, like, for example, if I said to you, we're going to go to a restaurant, and we in fact did this, right? We went to breakfast. I said, I'm not armed. Where do you want to sit? And it was like, I'll sit here so I can see this exit over here. I'm not worried about this window over here. And we discussed that at breakfast.
That's right.
And I didn't say this out loud, but I said, you're not going to use me as a human shield, are you? But that's what I was thinking. But I got Tony in front of me, like but you go somewhere, and without being paranoid, it should be, and I remind people of this, a lot of the protocols for really good self-defense, are applying what you've learned through osmosis from driving on American roads or wherever you live. When you drive, you're using the same skill set you need to navigate a crowd, right? Situational awareness. And if I said to you, I want you to go drive today, drive really fast, drive 5 miles over the speed limit, but only look at your hood ornament, which is the front sight metaphor. How soon, if you're on a highway, only looking at the hood ornament like this, how soon do you think you'd be in a car accident or cause one?
Well, I mean, that would happen incredibly fast here in Florida because people cut each other off to get on the interstate, go all the way to the passing lane, and then do under the speed limit. So it wouldn't take long.
But also think about this, your peripheral vision and your situational awareness and your field of view,
right,
it's compromised if you're just looking at the hood ornament.
For sure. I can give you a really good analogy of that. I've had a lot of trauma from everything from motor vehicle accidents to fights, you name it. And this is a prosthetic eye, and this one here, a little over a year ago, inside of a few days, my vision went away. And so there were choices as to what lenses, these intraocular lenses, could be put in there.
Yeah.
And the girl who was doing all these measurements, had all these super fancy machines, she'd had both eyes done with a intraocular lens that was essentially a trifocal. And she said most people, the brains adjust to it, but some people, they always see the rings between the different prescriptions. And when you're driving at night and the headlights hitting it, it creates these rings. So just out of an abundance of caution, we chose a slightly different lens where it basically works from your arm and out. So within a week, I ended up with 20/15 vision. So better than perfect vision. But from here in, I ended up with 20/50 vision, hence the reason I'm wearing these readers. Never had an optic on any of my pistols my entire life. SBRs, rifles, yes, but not pistols. And immediately found out that I couldn't see the iron sights without looking through a set of bifocals. But if I looked through the bifocals, I couldn't see stuff downrange. So it really brought the myopia into focus. I know, bad pun, where all of a sudden I had to get rid of the iron sights and learn how to shoot with red dots, reticles, HWSs, that sort of stuff. And it was quite a challenge, but it was a great example of what you're saying. I had two choices: either look through a bifocal and focus on iron sights, or not look through a bifocal, not be able to see my iron sights, but be able to see down, downrange.
Yeah.
It's close to home. I know exactly what you're saying.
It's super interesting. I guess the message here, folks, and a good example, listening to Chris's story, is if you are going to learn a personal defense system, you want to find a system that's built using the central nervous system, right? And that's what we've done for decades. And I was a lifelong martial artist, wrestled, boxed, taekwondo, Wing Chun, Jeet Kune Do, all the arts growing up in the 70s, during the Bruce Lee golden era of self-defense and martial arts. And but when I started teaching self-defense and realizing that, like, the complex motor skills don't work, and people were talking about tunnel vision and fear and couldn't breathe and couldn't move, and I accidentally discovered the power of the psychology of fear, and realized and learned that only the people who manage their fear manage to fight. It doesn't guarantee victory, but it guarantees that you're in the fight, and that's where it's got to start. And so if we go back to these horrific events that are plaguing the world right now, there are several almost melancholy, tragic, happy ending stories of people who fought back and killed terrorists, but didn't survive fighting back. But they saved people's lives by fighting back.
Right.
Other creative stories. I just read one a couple of days ago of a grandmother and grandfather who took their grandkids, twins, locked them in the safe room. The terrorists came in looking for them, and the grandmother ended up cooking for them and talking to them while the IDF approached and eventually, formed an assault and came in and lead poisoned these fuckers. But like, why didn't they just kill them right away? There was some organic, intuitive element in the grandmother, because the description of her husband was like yelling and all this. And these guys, this is an interesting thing. What's the difference between these guys and a suicide bomber? The suicide bomber comes in there, says something and fucking hits a button.
Right.
I always tell people bad guys only want one of three things: property, body, or life.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody comes in and they don't shoot you in the head right away, they want property or body. And so are they kidnapping you for ransom? Are they kidnapping you to rape you? Are they kidnapping you to torture you? There's a great, I don't know if you ever knew the name Colonel George Day. I had the honor of meeting him at a tactical conference years ago and shaking his hand. And I'd read in his book, he's a very famous Vietnam POW who had escaped 3 times. I think it was 3, a long time ago that I read it. Captured again, shot when he was an aircraft pilot. When he deployed from the aircraft, he hit the canopy on the way out and it broke his arm and knocked him out. And when he woke up, he was already in a pit being guarded by two of the enemy. He ended up killing both of them and trying to escape, getting shot, brought back, captured, trying to escape then. And they asked one of the questions in the book when he got home was, when he told his story, he said, "Why did you keep trying to escape?" He said, "Well, number one, it's the warrior's code. But number two, I knew," he said, "I had seen my teammates, my brothers in arms, being tortured and murdered. They didn't have the mental resilience. Some of them just died. And this is the greatest line ever. This is his quote. When death is the alternative, injury has its appeal. When death is the alternative, injury has its appeal. I always remembered that. Is like, okay, this ends with me dying, so I can die right here and take somebody down, or I can be like tied up and fucking, somebody snap my head off with a shovel. Well, it's fucking scary stuff, man.
It is. Just look at the stuff that happened at this musical rave in Israel. There's all kinds of footage, especially women, but some men being taken captive. They don't resist at all. And then they end up getting raped and murdered and paraded around. So we already know what the mindset is for these guys, right? We know that they like to slit your throat on TV and make a spectacle out of it. We know, like you mentioned earlier, they took their cell phones and took degrading videos and pictures of them and sent them to their own family members. These are sick motherfuckers, right? Yeah. So, and you can call it profiling, whatever you want. I mean, you can spot these guys quite easily. You know that this is, that type of terrorist. You literally have two choices. You can fight back and you might die on the spot, or you can go with them and die an even worse death. So,
right. Or you fight back and win. And that was the point of the story I said about the grandmother who had no physical skills, didn't have a gun. But like in our system, this. So check this out. If you guys are watching, this is our timeline of violence. And what we do is, like, what everyone does is they go, oh, here's a gun disarm. Oh, here's a knife disarm. Oh, here's how to get out of a headlock. That's D3. So the 3 Ds are detect, diffuse, defend. And so what this woman did, what the grandmother did, is her situational awareness and her ability to escape had been compromised very quickly. She had enough time to secure her grandkids in their safe room. These guys came in and very quickly they heard IDF. And so now the scenario went from, we're just going to murder these people, to we're going to hold up in here, we're going to barricade, and we're going to keep these people as hostages. And what kept them alive was the grandmother used her intuition and her organic, again, survival skills to create a defuse to calm these people down, and was saying to them something like, let me make you some food, let me get you some food. And whether it was implied, you need food energy to stay strong, to stay awake, whatever was said, which is something I would say to somebody. Look, I know you're going to kill me, but kill me after I serve you this 5-course meal, right? I'm making a joke here. Like, what you're doing is you're using the verbal to buy time, hoping that, some team is going to friggin' kick down the door and stop these guys, or I'm going to figure out something, or while the guy went to eat something, he took his gun and put it on the table to bite the burger or whatever fuck I made. Right. So there's a whole psychological purpose in that. When you talked about the people shown getting kidnapped, that's a complete. This is also from the program, in our No Fear program, understanding the neural circuitry of fear, understanding that a sudden stimulus, hey, scenario, I'm at a rave concert, I'm outside, it's the summer of love, look how beautiful it is, oh my God. Here's an interesting thing. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Right now, and be honest, Chris, and everyone watching this, be honest too, answer to yourself. A week ago, if you were in an outdoor concert and you saw paragliders coming in, how many of you would go, oh, look, paragliders, I wonder if that's part of the show?
Probably just about everybody.
Right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's easy now to go, how did they not notice that?
Yeah.
And it's something I wanted to bring up, because we condemn stuff. Well, it's great. You got 20/20 fucking hindsight now that you know. Yep. So, well, that's why I only ever go to an outdoor concert with my sniper rifle. Well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, because of the paraglider attack, right? I'm going to bring a giant fan, so I'm going to blow them off course. Like, you can do whatever you want, but you're only spitting ideas now because you know what happened.
Right.
If you were there too, you would have gone, what the fuck's that? Are those guys off course?
Well, there's another piece of that Mike Sterling spoke to on a prior video here, was that this was at 6:30 a.m. So these kids have been up partying all night long, listening to music all night long.
They're drunk, they're high, they're tired.
They're drunk, they're high, they're tired. Yeah. So most of them were not paying attention to the Z-axis, barely paying attention to the XY axis.
Well,
they had impaired.
That's an effect. That's obviously a factor, but I would argue that if you and I were at a football stadium watching the Super Bowl, and we saw parachuters come in there, you wouldn't draw your gun if you had somehow got it in the stadium and start shooting. You would go, I wonder if that's part of the show. Right. I wonder if these guys are off course. Like, what's going on here? Is this like remember when you said the streakers, like running across the field? Well, I wonder if it's like I wonder if it's some moron, like climate change activist coming to glue himself to the field.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go, this is a terrorist attack. Now, if we're at a football game and we see paragliders, there's a stampede and there's probably more people getting killed because of the stampede, because they're freaking out. It's all about managing fear, which comes to the next part of this, is like, what do you do? Well, I can say to you the simple stuff that everyone gives. Know where your exits are. Know that most people are going to panic and flood the way they came in.
Right.
So what are your alternate exits? When I'm at a concert, I always go out first of all, I try to leave 15 minutes before anything's over. So there's a good little cue from there. And a lot of you will go, oh, but I'm going to miss my favorite song is going to be the encore. Okay. You can stay, but what's your plan? And that's what I meant by, I left my gun in the truck. It's locked up. Hope nothing happens, versus, where are my improvised weapons? What are my escape routes? Do I know how to do a gun or knife disarm? Because if somebody walks by me with a weapon and I go, fuck, where did that come from? How quickly, and it's all mind speed. And that's what we did in Monday's class online. I taped an M4 to one of my Bob dummies, and I showed people start off all these like penetration drills. How do you clear, control, counter? What do you do? And you're not going to do that if you don't manage your fear. That's the elegance of the system. And it's not to say that it's not scary. That's the C in fuck. You got to control your fear. So
just to touch on a couple quick points there, because you've never met Mike Sterling before, and he mentioned some things pretty similar to you. He said, this is a military guy, of course, but he's saying, if I'm the bad guy and I'm attacking this venue, I'm going to place guys with drums, full autos at every exit, so that when people come streaming out of those exits, we're just going to mow them down, sort of thing. And so his advice was the same as yours. Don't take the standard exit, either find some other means of egress, or what you just touched on, improvise as far as weapons are concerned. Since you've probably gone through scanners, you probably didn't have weapons with you. So I'm just commenting because it's interesting. You've got a guy who's a lifelong military guy versus a guy like yourselves, a lifelong self-defense expert who've never met before, but the thought process is the same.
Yeah. And that's super cool. What's interesting is I worked with some military teams, and they were doing some CQB clearing. And I said, I'm not an operator. Like, I'm just teaching you guys start off flinch conversion and crowd penetrate, like stuff we do off long gun and handgun and stuff. And I said, but if I were in this fight, I would not move like that. And a couple of the guys said, well, you could see their body language. Well, you're not an operator, so you don't get to have an opinion.
Right.
And I picked up on that. I said, listen, I'm just going to share insights that my intuition says. I'm going to throw it out there, and you can listen and contemplate and try it out. Everything that I did, you remember what I said earlier? Like I started wrestling when I was 7 years old, right? Competitively wrestling in elementary school and continued wrestling. And then I discovered martial arts, and then I discovered boxing, and I still love all that stuff. But when my first student lost a fight I was training him for, he was a 15-year-old kid getting bullied in school. When he lost this, it was 1980, and his loss impacted me so much that I was compelled to rethink how we teach self-defense. And my observation in 1980, at 20 years old, man, I went, oh my God, we teach self-defense wrong. Because when you described the scenario, I realized I taught him all the physical attributes of being able to fight, but I didn't teach him anything about pre-fight psychology, but I didn't know anything, right? I didn't, okay, I'm tunnel vision, I can't breathe, I'm freaking out, I'm focused over here. I'm hesitating, I'm visualizing like this guy's so big, what am I going to do? And so I was, it didn't exist, I was forced to build that. And then I realized, preemptively fighting is very different than protectively fighting. When you're ambushed, you're trying to protect yourself. It's not preemptive anymore. And what there will be is a massive fear spike. And then my research on that neural circuitry of fear and the neuroscience is like, well, we're not just going to, like shoot the way we shot on the range. We're not going to think clearly. And go back to the I forgot my phone analogy. You left your fucking phone somewhere and everything in you panicked for a second. You stopped moving. Your situational awareness was compromised. You weren't thinking logically. You're like, oh my God. And then when you stopped, you realize I had an adrenaline dump. I'm vertically breathing because I thought I left my fucking phone somewhere and couldn't remember what it was. And it's an amazing thing to think about going, if that's true, then what makes me think that just because I carry and I've gone to the range once a month and I shoot 50 bullets on a piece of paper or a piece of steel, that when guys come into a room and start shooting, that I'm just going to go, fuck you.
So, and there's levels of elevation here as well, right? So Mike Glover was on our channel recently from Fieldcraft Survival, and he raised a point that we're aware of at Survival Dispatch. But I mean, you're talking at this, your fears at this, code red level sort of thing, right? Mike said, even if you step it down a notch from there, your heart's probably racing. And he said, have you ever tried to shoot accurately when your heart's 140, 150 beats per minute? And it's an interesting concept because you can elevate your heart rate by, running, doing some exercises. And the crazy thing is that when you go to shoot, if you haven't trained at that level, you're lucky if you hit the broadside of a barn. So let me give you a quick example that you'll love. This is from Mike Sterling as well. His company was doing some training for the Atlanta PD, and he brought his best guy, like his best carbine guy. And so you've got all these high-end SWAT team guys are shooting 1 MOA, so 1 inch at 100 yards on this private range that the cops have. And Mike's guy is shooting 4 MOA, so 4 inches at 100 yards. And they're all laughing at him. And so, but they didn't know what the nature of the training was. So Mike's like, okay, everybody, we've got your kits ready here. Get your kit on. We're going for a 10-mile run. And so now everybody's loaded up with, many pounds, plate carriers, magazines, the whole 9 yards. They run the 10 miles. When they get back from running, he said, no break, leave your kit on, go up to the bench and start shooting again. And there were guys who were huffing and puffing, their heart rates were high, they were 24-inch MOA, like 2-foot circles at 100 yards. And Mike's guy shot the same 4 MOA at 100 yards. He did all the exercises they did. He took the kit, the 100-pound kit, and wore it. but he still shot 4-inch MOAs no matter what, which is all A zone. It's all, the bad guy's DRT, right? But it was just interesting, even without the fear element, just the physiological element of your heart racing, you can't catch your breath trying to shoot. I mean, I can testify to it as well. When you're physically under duress like that, unless you practice it on a regular basis, all your skills go directly out the window. And it's why we preach to people, you better train under some sort of duress if you think you're going to survive the shit hitting fan. So sorry to hijack you there.
Yeah,
but
no. Mike is a good friend, and we've actually done stuff together out at Fieldcraft, and certainly his experience and his leadership. Anyone who hasn't listened to that podcast should.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah, but you still come back to the mind navigates the body.
Right.
So if you don't catch yourself going right, and you're hyperventilating, like you're not getting oxygen to the brain, you're not getting the proper blood flow to the brain. I mean, that's going to cloud your thinking. That's going to, now you're starting to maybe induce like a non-clinical panic attack, because you're not breathing properly. It's only self-awareness. Like, how do you catch yourself and go and do some box breathing or some combat breathing? How do you or you're hiding in a closet from the bad guy and you're unarmed and you're in the closet going, I don't want to die. Like you're like, if you don't go, dude, everyone can hear you. Like that's self-awareness.
Yeah.
How do you improve your self-awareness? You improve your self-awareness by understanding how to manage fear, and improving self-awareness through fear management improves your situational awareness. And they're all connected.
So, we've got this series of, conversations like this from experts like yourself to hopefully enlighten some of our followers as to how they can improve their chances of survival if they find themselves, in an area where there's a terrorist attack. And on the one hand, I'm super thankful that you're batting cleanup, right? Because you're pulling all of these disparate pieces together. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, man, I should have had Tony on Survival Dispatch News first, because everybody else that we've had on has discussed the common stuff, right? Humans never rise to the occasion. They follow their level of training. So train some more. Don't eat that garbage processed food. Do some exercise. Don't sit at the range shooting like this. Shoot while you're on the run, all that kind of stuff. But you're the only person who talks the seconds before the shit hitting the fan and the psychological component to it. So I'm a little torn now. Maybe we should have had you come on before and back clean up.
It doesn't matter. I mean, like, you've got a tremendous opportunity because of your team and your ability to educate people through conversations like this. So just shoot out those messages, inspiring people. At the end of the day, that grandmother who used I'm going to go back to this real quick because I want to show something here, who used these skills here, right? The D2, the de-escalation skills, she used that to buy time. It's during the D2 that you can control. That's the self-awareness piece. That's the fear management piece here. That's where I go from, the parasympathetic system to the sympathetic nervous system. That I control and regulate. This is where I'm thinking about what can I do? I'm buying time, please, right? You're figuring out your stuff. You're keeping your attacker calm or distracted, right? So she was deploying instinctive D2 skills. The one thing I want to show this slide here, this is your 4 stages to action. Notice there's like no techniques here. Functional movement. There's no like sweep the leg. remember that from that famous movie, right? This isn't Karate Kid. This isn't Jackie Chan, Jet Li. If you want to be safe, you've got to be, if you see this as, of course we are the spear system, but the tip of the spear, you need to be the tip of the spear in your fight, your point, you're your own bodyguard, you're the first responder in your confrontation. We need situational awareness, but we know that in a violent encounter or sudden violence, situational awareness is always compromised to a degree. Always compromised to a degree. Right. Otherwise, you would intercept everything.
Yeah.
There'd never be, a reactionary force. There'd always be a pre-act to contact, not a react to contact.
Right.
So when our situational awareness is compromised, we will get a fear spike. Oh shit. Now, from the fear spike, we need to manage our fear. And then we choose what is the functional movement, and that's threat discrimination based on my skill set and my training. If we look at an untrained person has to adapt and overcome and improvise, where a trained person manages their fear spike, their timeline to convert. So I'll give you a great example, and hopefully everyone knows, what a double feed or a spear, a stovepipe is on their gun. So I've got a gun, I'm trained, I've got ammo, and all of a sudden I'm going, holy shit, boom, 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 click, click. If I don't know, if I just bought the gun and I didn't do any training, I will not know how to clear that jam. I'll go, and I'll fuck around here, and I'm using time.
Just for posterity's sake, that's a training pistol. That's not a live pistol.
Right. I should have identified that.
No, it's just fine. There invariably somebody will leave a comment down below saying that you were exhibiting dangerous behavior. When it's a piece of plastic.
I literally had a cop at a course I was doing at the original Smith & Wesson Academy. I would regularly flag the class with a red gun, like a literal plastic red gun. It looks like a gun made out of crayons.
I have one sitting right over here.
But I in teaching stuff, I point the gun at people. Everyone knows, anyone in my training would know. I usually mention that, but this is a training pistol.
It's all good.
And you can't get shot through Zoom, FYI. But Chris, I literally had, I think this guy invented woke. This was like 15 years ago. Wrote on his evaluation form, instructor violated blah, blah, blah by pointing a training pistol at class. Because like, really, dude?
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, the hall monitors will disagree with you, and they will say that best practices say that you never point a firearm at something you're not willing to destroy, whether it's a real pistol or not, because you can develop bad habits. And my counter to that is some of us are a little bit more, more intelligent than an amoeba, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And if you're going to get as realistic as possible for training and scenarios, and you're using, essentially a prop like that, there's a time and place for everything.
Yeah, I mean, the context is everything. If I point the gun at you to teach you a gun disarm, how am I supposed to point a training gun at you without pointing a training gun at you? Like,
case in point.
Right.
Agreed.
But I forget where I was going with that. The timeline. If you're untrained, so between stimulus response, everyone should know the Viktor Frankl famous quote, right? Our ability to choose, right, determines our outcome. I'm not going to do the whole quote because I just forgot it. But it's this, our ability to choose our response happens during the refractory delay between the stimulus response. If you've got no training and a guy runs in, shoots somebody beside you, sticks a gun in your face and says, where's your kids? Where's your money? What he starts, you're the hostage, and you're like, and then someone comes out of a room and they shoot that, and you realize this guy's going to kill me. And in that moment where the person went from training prop, went from holding the gun here, like in Blazing Saddles, right?
Yeah.
So, goes like this and goes bang and shoots. And in that moment, shoots somebody else, and you go, fuck, and you grab the person and you start fighting. The refractory delay there was like 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds, where you, me, and Mike Glover are all trained. And Mike is trained more kinetically than he is hand to hand, although he trains hand to hand, where I'm trained more hand to hand than I am kinetic. Gotcha. In terms of, if we just looked at his 10,000 hours is like 100,000 hours with guns and knives, and mine's like, 1,000 hours.
The inverse.
Right?
Yeah.
So when someone sticks a gun near me, my brain is going like it's going, oh, fuck, here we go. And I'm ready to fucking move because I've analyzed it and I've played around with that. Where somebody else is trained, but you've got to now download the program. The untrained person has to adapt and improvise. The trained person downloads the program, and how fast you access the program is going to be proportional to this metaphoric, like you're the operating system and your training is your software. Do you have the latest updates, right? Have you cleared your cache? Do you have enough RAM?
Right.
And we've all had computers where we're trying to do stuff and it's getting really slow. And then we get the wheel of death if you're not Apple. And what that is like, use that metaphorically, that is fear. I'm overloading the system and I'm worrying about too many other things. Close all those windows, reboot. And that's the metaphor that when we're teaching people fear management, when it comes to managing violence, is how do you reboot your brain? How do you clear your fear and start taking action when it's a choiceless choice?
Right. Well said. All right, Tony. So before we wrap up, any last words of advice for people who have the unfortunate circumstances of finding themselves on the X, whether it's a terrorist attack or not? Because I got a piece of advice for them is they should look at your human weapon system. It's it'll improve your chances of survival exponentially, and that's not from you. That's coming from me.
Well, I appreciate
and
that.
I'm not the expert.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, like I've been studying violence, fear, and aggression for 43 years because that's when I started teaching. And I've been a martial artist for over 50. I'm 63 years old now. I abhor violence and I am afraid of fear. So I study fear because I don't want it to interfere with what I have to do. And that was that realization. If I can change my relationship with fear and turn it into fuel, I can drive me, the metaphoric vehicle, away, barricade, or through, like drive through the attack. I would tell people, if you want to study fear, we do stuff differently. We focus on the psychology of fear. This isn't therapy. This isn't tell me about your childhood. This is about, hey, you've got to do something now. And it could be public speaking. It could be, talking to your spouse about a difficult conversation. It could be managing sudden violence. The neural circuitry of fear works the same. And if you understand that fear loop that I showed earlier and how to navigate it, you go through it. It's an amazing program. And then our human weapon system program is just this idea that most of us have outsourced our safety. And so what we do is, like, sudden danger produces psychological fear. And because I'm not resilient and self-reliant, I then outsource my safety. Oh, there's a cop. It doesn't occur to me that he's a fake cop, that he's in the case of what happened. And my cognitive dissonance and my desire to just somebody save me is like, oh, listen to that guy, he's got a uniform on.
Right.
And you've got to be resilient, and to be resilient, you got to be self-reliant, and to be resilient and self-reliant, you got to be able to manage fear. So I come at it like I could come on here and go, oh, I've got this move that stops terrorists. It's this technique, and everyone would buy it because everyone wants a fucking quick fix.
Right.
And the real answer is this. And it's one of the reasons I'm so proud of my team and what we do all over the world is the fastest way to learn how to protect yourself is to tap into the systems that you're born with and that you're using. Neurobiology is the whole startle response system. You can't override it. It's going to happen.
I'm Jason Salyer with Survival Dispatch, and when disaster strikes, will you be ready? Power outages, natural disasters, economic collapse, and the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. You can gain instant access to our team of survival experts, stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans, proven techniques to help you get home, shelter in place, or bug out safely. Don't leave your family's safety to chance. Visit survivaldispatch.com to get
An untrained person might flinch like this, and I might flinch like this, and I start moving. And Mike Glover might flinch like this, and he starts moving. But Mike talks about the startle response and has incorporated our stuff and talks about. He actually did a room clearing video with Sean Ryan, and mentioned the spear and the stuff from work I've done with different military units. So it's interesting. It's like if you want to protect yourself, you start with yourself. Become a human weapon,
Right.
and then go. You know what? I understand more about managing fear. That gives me a better chance. I understand more about weaponizing the startle flinch. That gives me a better chance. If I'm an extreme, like even if I had to get through a crowd. Like if I was at a concert with my kids and shit broke out 50 yards away and my kids are freaking out, it's my job as their protector to get them out.
Right. 100%.
And I may need to penetrate the crowd and people in front of me. And so I still need to manage my fear. I still need to get through people there. They're not combatants. They're just people panicking. But I can't let their panic influence how I move. Fear is contagious, but so is courage. So yeah, you're right. And I'm glad you brought up the human weapon thing. I mean, if people listen to what I said at the beginning, I'm very, very transparent about not exploiting stuff. There's a story I like to tell, a true story. Right after 9/11, there were a bunch of subject matter experts who released box cutter self-defense programs right after 9/11.
Yeah.
And I got on a call with our affiliates, and we've got hundreds of affiliates around the world. And I got on a call. We were using WebEx at the time. Cisco didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And this is how long it was, 21 years ago. And I got on the call with them, and I said, if I see any of you advertising box cutter self-defense, you're fucking off the team. If you didn't have a box cutter self-defense program the day before 9/11, you don't have one now, you exploitive motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Don't do that. So our stuff and what we've been teaching has been around since before 9/11. And if you know Pat McNamara, and he was in my class at where he used to work on 9/11. That's how long I've been in this game. And my message has always been the same, Chris. The mind navigates the body. Muscle memory doesn't exist in the way we like to refer to it. It's neural patterns. And I need those neural patterns to be the ones that'll make me safest, soonest. And that's what this whole human weapon system program, I realize people can't train with me personally. They can't get to our training, or they just want to study in the comfort of their home or their home gym.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've gone through it myself. You don't have to be in person for this stuff. I'm thinking if I was going to take all of the advice that our subject matter experts, yourself included, have given our audience over the course of the past 8 or 9 days, is that, we've been preaching train, and then train some more. But there's 2 aspects to that. There's the physical training and there's the mental training. And once again, you're the only person who discusses the mental aspect to it. So you can't just train the body. You have to train the mind as well. Like you said, if you don't, the mind leads the body, right? Like I worked in construction when I was younger in high school and stuff. And if somebody thinks they're going to fall off a wall, they will fall off the wall. Simple as that. You know, obviously my stuff's a lot more simple than yours, but
Right. No, but it's you know, those of you golf, right? You're up there and you see the water. Don't hit it in the water. Don't hit it in the water. You know, where does the golf ball go? It's the same thing when you're squeezing a trigger. If you've got a shot running through there, dude, you're rushing your thought. You didn't control your breathing. You didn't see your sight. Whatever your cues are, most people. You shouldn't be surprised when your round hits the right place, and you shouldn't be surprised when you miss your shot. Your intuition knows, and that's part of the program. Is how do we recreate and reconnect to instincts, intuition, and intelligence? That's all part of the program too. It's a really neat. It's a really the program took me 40 years to put together. We spent a year making it, and it'll literally make you safer. And it doesn't matter if you're a jiu-jitsu black belt or no training or a boxer or whatever, because as you pointed out, Chris, is we, you know, it's all about the relationship between the psychology and physiology and the connection that is what's called neuromuscular communication. You know, how do I tell myself to throw a palm strike, or how do I tell myself to draw my weapon, even though you might not remember it? You do it, and you can be trained. So someone could say, look, you need to have a wicked elbow or a wicked front kick, or you need to be able to chop somebody in the throat. Well, it's easy to practice those biomechanic skills, but you won't, you know, get your hand up and smash somebody in the throat if you don't manage the fear during the assault.
right.
So it's really connected, and I hope people do a little research on it.
Well, I'm sure we'll have you back again, Tony, as
Anytime,
per
man.
usual. Really appreciate your insight. You're definitely one of a kind. Thanks again, Tony.
Appreciate it, man. Stay safe.